Hey there, it's Julie. We're talking today about how to reorganize your schedule for more spaciousness and more effectiveness. And if you don't know me, I help women identified, hardworking, busy coaches, consultants, and healers, and other service-based business owners like you to transform a business that drains you into a business that sustains you. There's a dog. So you're great at what you do. And you have clients, there's money coming in. That's not your biggest problem. The biggest problem is that, you're working too damn hard for it, right? So I'm here to help. In this series, we're going to be walking through the 7 most common time, money, energy, sanity leaks that are draining you and draining your business. And we're going to talk about how to close them up as well. Because when you do that, then you get this really awesome aligned flow of energy through your business. And that is what we're going for, because that's what makes business more easeful and enjoyable. All right. So I got my notes over here. So when things start getting busier in your business, like a whole bunch of work comes in, or you're launching something new, or a pandemic happens, right? Like, what do you do? What happens to your schedule? For most people, it means that you start skipping your self-care, right? Like the morning routine gets crunched, the exercise goes, maybe family time, the nature time, and there's this, and then we tell ourselves it's temporary, right? So that's just what happens for a lot of folks, right? And you might say I'm going to work out at the end of the day, but then, you're still working at the end of the day. You're just too tired at the end of the day to do it. Or you start booking things closer together, right? Or booking things at times that you don't really want to be booking things, right? Like early in the morning, later in the evening. Or let's be honest, some of you never really had regular client hours, or, actual specific times that you're working and not working, right? So similarly to the first energy leak, there's this way that you just kind of power through when things get busy until you get to that, that supposed other side, right? And then that gets reflected in your schedule. And of course, it seems like you have to do this, right? Because there's a belief that when you have a lot to do, then you need to cut down on the stuff that's not work related, right? But I think that when you do that you suffer and your work suffers, right? And, honestly, it might be fine to do this for a week or so. Depending on your constitution, some people can hold this up for a while, right? And I guess I want to also there's a bit of a myth too about this ever elusive balance thing that we talk about. I don't actually believe that in a given day, you're not going to have balance every single day of your life, right? Balance happens over weeks and over months and over years sometimes, right? It's not every day perfectly in balance. So I think that's important to kind of toss that out. And that said, many of you have this tendency, right? The general pattern is that you can easily slip, your self-care time, your time for you can easily slip behind work stuff, family care, all the other things, right? And it's not great for you, but you're still doing it. So the question is why? Why does self-care continue to slide off the calendar? So the answer is going to be really, really unique for each person. And each person has to do their own kind of digging and unearthing to understand the why beneath this. I'll give you a few examples. One of them might be that you have a FOMO thing, your fear of missing out, right? So you just try to squeeze everything in. Someone asks you to speak at a cool thing or co-lead a workshop and you're yeah, that's an awesome opportunity. And you just say yes, you're going to miss out if you don't say yes. Sometimes it's because you're kind of being a perfectionist, right? And being a perfectionist eats up your time and makes you work later and longer. I know about this one. It might be a scarcity issue, right? Even if you have money coming in, especially at a crazy uncertain time like this, there's this feeling oh my gosh, I got to take this. Cause what if it's the last work that's going to come in, and that stuff is really low beneath the surface and it's not always noticeable, right? You might be buying into this urgency thing that our culture promotes. It has to be done now, which is rarely true. Let me tell you, you might feel guilty taking time for yourself, or that it's rude to say no to things, or you just have an overgiving pattern, a tendency to just put everything else, other people before yourself, right? And some people have trouble asking for help. So I'll talk more about that one in a couple of videos from now, but there's a million reasons why we let our boundaries get crossed, right? And we have to unearth what's going on beneath the surface so that we can actually make some shifts. Because it's important to understand, like, just because you put the exercise block on your calendar, that doesn't mean that's usually not enough, to stick to it, just putting the block there, right? So like I said, you have to do the work to unearth the beliefs, start to shift them. And so that when you do put the block on your schedule, you actually honor it, right? Because then again, I don't want to beat a horse, but you can't really run a successful business on fumes. And if you're interested in growing your business, it's going to be challenging to do that if you're already kind of at the edge and your schedule is already full, right? And I also happen to know that many of you hold very strong values around self-care and fueling up, like, so that you can have the kind of long-term impact that you want. And for some of you, you even integrate into your work helping other people slow down and be more intentional and have good boundaries, right? Like, I work with a lot of coaches, and that's so many women's work, right? So that's going to come up again and again, right? And if you're not practicing what you preach, essentially, like, that's going to be reflected in your work, right? I'm guessing some of you have felt that, right? When you're not doing your own, your own care, then you're not as inspired or creative. I've definitely felt that way. Like, when I'm not out in nature enough, like, my work feels flat. I'm less inspired, right? And it's less fun for me too. So I want to give you a few tips for starting to shift this. And one thing, FOMO, that's me. Yeah, hey Beth. I'm just kind of new to the whole Instagram Live thing. So I'm like, oh yeah, there's people here. So excuse me for not like fully engaging. I'm just starting to like, figure this whole thing out. So, I want to give you a few tips for keeping the self-care in your schedule. And I call this creating a self-care first schedule. I know, really creative, where self-care is at the center and it's held sacred. And this is opposed to, as opposed to like an I come last schedule, right? So I'm going to share these tips, and then there's a caveat at the end, or sort of another tip, but it's an important one. I'm going to leave it to the end. So stick around for that one. It relates to all of them. So the first one I totally mentioned already. Like, you have to do the inner work first to understand why things keep getting pushed out of the way, like why you're not honoring your time and your energy, right? And this is not easy stuff, right? This is why we have a mindset coach inside Nourished, inside my group program, and at the Replenish retreat, which I'm going to tell you about after I finish this. So this is deep stuff. It takes a long time to work with. And so, but it has to be done. Okay. So that's the first thing. The second thing is about getting really clear on what's most important to you, and then looking at your calendar, looking at your schedule, and seeing, is this, are my values, are my priorities, reflected in my schedule? And if not, then you know that it's time to start making some changes. So you have this kind of baseline. That's a very helpful thing to do when you start to recreate a schedule. The next tip is to practice saying no politely, because I think that so many people are just like, oh, I can't say no, and I feel bad, and they think it's going to be this big negative push. So I would invite you to figure out your own way that feels good for you to say no nicely. So for example, wow, that sounds really awesome, but I just don't have capacity right now, and I wouldn't be able to give it like the time and energy that it deserves, but thank you so much, right? So find your own version of like how to say no in a way that's actually could be like a compliment instead of shutting somebody down, right? Which is the belief that we have, okay? And then here are a few really quick ones that you could just go into your calendar and start to implement today. But again, the deeper work helps. So the first one is to use a scheduling app only to enforce clear client hours. I know for some of you, you're already on the scheduling app thing, but I know a surprising amount of very experienced, very successful entrepreneurs who still are unable to let go of the scheduling, okay? And I'm going to talk about this in a sec, but what happens if you're not doing what the opportunity here is that you can create a schedule, put it into the program, and so that when people go to schedule themselves, they literally can't schedule outside of the hours that you've designated for that kind of activity. So if you're not doing that, this is a huge game-changing thing to do, and it's actually something you can just do without without even doing all the deep personal work. Okay, another one here, a simple one, is to take lunch, right? Like put the lunch hour in your calendar and commit to, eating outside or at least going away from your desk, right? Eat lunch and have healthy food for yourself. Even if that means preparing something the night before, having food that like really nourishes you during the day is an awesome gift for yourself. Or maybe somebody nice in your house will make it for you. I'm lucky somebody makes me lunch. So another tip is to schedule creative work time. So this means you're blocking off 2, 3, 4, maybe more hours, maybe once or twice or 3 times a month to do the writing and the creative brainstorming and the stuff that feels like you can't squeeze it in that 30 minutes between clients. I take, every other Wednesday, I take like a day of no, or like 5 hours of no appointments at all. And that's when I get a lot of writing done, a lot of, content writing and stuff. So I need that or else it just like totally doesn't get done. And then finally, scheduling time for nothing, like literally for nothing. And you could put the block on your calendar to keep it as nothing. But the idea is that you get to have these times that you get to decide in the moment intuitively what feels good to do. And there's a lot of freedom in that. There's a very special feeling about saying like, oh, I've planned nothing for this whole entire day and I can do what I feel like doing. Now, as a mom of a toddler, I don't get to do that very often these days, but we all do what we can, right? So, and that leads me to my final tip, which is kind of the caveat too that I mentioned earlier, which is this. All these tips, all these things, everyone's got their like, here's how you do it. Here's how you make the perfect schedule and all this, right? And I've got mine too, obviously, right? But the most important thing is that you practice self-compassion. Is that I think that actually this is the most important quality to cultivate as an entrepreneur, because entrepreneurism is challenging, right? This shit's not easy, okay? And so we have to be kind to ourselves. You will cross your own boundaries. You will bail on a walk because you have to finish up work, right? Nobody's perfect with their schedules. Nobody, except for maybe like Tony Robbins kind of people. I don't really understand them, but this is like a normal thing, right? To not be perfect at this. And so if you take away one thing from this, it's like, be kind to yourself around this. Don't punish yourself when you make a mistake, because everyone makes mistakes with this stuff. So, so that's actually my most important tip. And, I'll just say in closing, you don't have to see clients when you don't want to. You're the boss, right? You get to decide. You don't have to say yes to people who want to pick your brain. You don't have to sacrifice yourself for your clients or your family or anyone. You don't have to. But in order to change, you're going to need to change some of your boundary scheduling habits, right? And I think there's a myth that somehow structure is restrictive. But I actually think about structure as creating more freedom. So I always use this analogy, but if you imagine a river and its banks, the banks guide the flow of the river. Like it's a structure that guides the flow of the river. If there were no river banks, there'd be water everywhere. It'd be like a big puddle, right? So the structure allows for freedom and allows for flow. And so similarly, when you put more structure into your calendar, like I'm going to do this every Thursday from 10 to 12, right? Other times open up that are totally free of work. So I just invite you to if you have some discomfort with putting more structure in your calendar, to sit with that concept. Okay, cool. So if you would like to start freeing up more time and energy and money in your business to fuel your dreams, we are going to go really deep on this at the Replenish Retreat, which is happening January 14th to 17th this year. So mark your calendars. We'll be launching registration for that soon, I think in the next week or so. Make sure to join my email list so that you can get access to the earliest bird special. I always do an earliest bird, like a quick, if you sign up right, like in the first week, you get like an extra discount. So that's going to happen. You can sign up, my links in my bio, or it's juliewoolcoaching.com. And on the retreat, we're going to slow way down. We're going to dive deep into these areas, and we're actually going to start closing up your highest leverage leaks at the retreat. Okay. And it's technically virtual, but I'm inviting everyone who attends to get away, right? To, if it feels comfortable and safe for you, you know, like get an Airbnb, get a hotel room, hide somewhere in your house and make it into a little retreat space, whatever you can do. But there's going to be time in nature, movement. You will not be on a screen all day. I promise. It's going to be yummy. Like this retreat, I do this retreat every year. So again, drop me a PM or get on my email list if you want to make sure to hear about the registration period. And it's free when you are in Nourished. So that's another cool thing. So thank you very much. I'm going to do another video in a few days about the third energy leak, and we're going to start to get into money leaks. So that's the next 2 videos are about money. So stay tuned, and I hope to see you soon. Thank you.